husband sent me one of her reels that was like, do you find your husband repulsive? Literally, like, my sex drive has been at zero since having my son almost 5 years ago. Like, when will you want to have sex with me again, Claude?
And then I had this really bad breakup and I hired a relationship coach. Well, I looked online and I Googled, like, how to get your boyfriend back, essentially all on my own. With 4 kids under the age of 5, my younger sister was dying. I couldn't get back to see her.
How did you finally repair the relationship? Because I know that you and your husband are now together, so. Hello, Sophie. Welcome to the Claude Code. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me. So much
Oh
fun.
my gosh. I am so excited to have you on. Like, every woman needs you in her back pocket at all times. And I'm just so excited for more women to hear your voice and what you have to say about femininity and marriage and taking responsibility and divorce and sex. Like, we are going to cover some hot topics today, guys. And so, Sophie, tell us a little bit about you, who you are, your story, and what you do, how you help women.
Oh my God. Of course. I'm so excited to be here. I was loved talking to you, Claude. So yeah, I'm Sophie and I'm a relationship coach, mostly for women. I do occasionally work with men one-on-one, but mostly with women. And yeah, I help women to turn around marriages. My specialty is really helping women whose marriages have fallen down into the ditch, who are kind of on the brink of divorce, about to leave, he's leaving, big ruptures in their marriage. But I also work with women who are like on the hill down, or maybe just who want a little bit of a tune-up in their relationship as well.
I love that. And that just reminds me, you guys, how I found Sophie. Okay. My husband sent me one of her reels that was like, do you find your husband repulsive? He sent me that because literally, like, my sex drive has been at zero since having my son almost 5 years ago. And we've been trying to, like, debunk this problem. Like, when will you want to have sex with me again, Claude? And so he sends me this reel and I'm like, who is this woman, you know? And I'm one of those people that's like, oh, somebody put something in my universe that I need. I'm reaching out to this lady, like, I'm listening. And I reached out to you, and like within a week I had hired you. Like, Sophie is my relationship and femininity coach in real time. Anyways, had to say that.
Yeah, I knew what I love about you, Claude, is like I never heard from you, never messaged me, you just booked a call and you mean business and I love it. It's like you're an action taker, which is unbelievable.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay,
You're
so
welcome.
tell us, now that we know what you do and how we met, tell us a little bit about your own story and like why you became a relationship coach.
Yeah, so I've always had a fascination with like the human mind and personal development work. Like ever since I was really young. Like I started doing yoga when I was like 12. And in college, I got into psychology and I also majored in art, but I was really fascinated in psychology. And so I minored in psychology. And my first placement was working in a maximum psychiatric prison with inmates, doing addiction therapy and doing art therapy. And it was just like mind blowing to me at that young age to be in that environment with all these men and but I was fascinated with the human mind. And then I got into working in schools, but like inner city London schools, working in the behavior units of schools. And so I've always just been like fascinated with spirituality as well, like yoga, meditation, personal development, and psychology and the human mind.
Cool.
But that just like wasn't my focus. So I'm just going to charge my computer as well. And so then what I experienced in my own life multiple times was relationship breakdowns. And when I was experiencing these breakdowns, I would like go online and watch all of these videos and buy courses, even like in my 20s when I would have like these big breakups. And I would watch these courses for like hours and hours at night and just be fascinated with relationships. But my own relationships would just tank over and over again. And then I had this really bad breakup and I hired a relationship coach. Well, I looked online and I Googled like how to get your boyfriend back. And I found this random woman and I hired her. And I think we Skyped because it was a long time ago, maybe like 15 years ago. Um, and then like I had this massive turnaround in my life from hiring this coach. And I met my husband randomly in a yoga class. And we had this like beautiful love story and everything was perfect. Like I got married, we had kids, and everything seemed to be completely fine until I had my fourth baby and my marriage just completely tanked. I was exhausted. My younger sister was dying of cancer. I was really suffering from like grief and I think postpartum depression. And it was also like the beginning of COVID. And so everything was just like one on top of the other. And we didn't have any family or friends. I wasn't living anywhere close to my family.
Oh my
His
God.
family was on the other side of the country. And so I was like essentially all on my own with four kids under the age of 5. My
Oh my,
younger sister was dying. I couldn't get back to see her. And I was just like crying all the time and really, really miserable.
oh my,
And my husband was working 2 hours away. Like actually, it was probably an hour and a half away in the city. And he would get up at 4 and drive to work and be there and then come home. So we were living like very separate lives. And I was very tired, angry, resentful. And he was feeling exactly the same, but we like couldn't communicate. And our marriage just kind of got worse and worse and worse until it was actually it was in the summer, it was July, and my mom called me to tell me that my sister was just about to die, and I was just absolutely devastated. And I looked at my husband, and he couldn't even look at me, and he didn't like hug me. He was like, it was just the weirdest thing. And I remember thinking, like, God, this has gotten so bad that I'm in like the darkest days, and there's like nothing here between us.
like
And
what is,
I asked,
when you say like it got worse and worse, like what does your day-to-day look around this person? Like you're not talking, you're not communicating. Are you sleeping in the same bed? Are you like, are you just strained? Like, what does that look like when you say it got worse and worse and worse?
a lot of fighting. Just
Okay.
like we would try and go out for dinner, but we would end up just like screaming at each other on the way home in the car. Like we couldn't see eye to eye. He got very, very cold, very distant. And then I would try and get him to talk to me, and he wouldn't want to talk. He was just on his phone all the time. I would be like, why are you not talking to me? Like, I want, and then I was complaining a lot. Like, I'm so miserable. I'm so unhappy. Like, I'm on my own all the time. Um, it was just, yeah, it was like really distant. And even like I did get back to see my sister briefly before she died. And I remember being over there and like not really calling my husband. Like I remember texting him once, like, oh, it's awful being here. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. But there was like nothing, like no real intimacy left between us.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was bad.
Okay. Because I know a lot of people will be like, "Oh, my marriage got so bad, so bad." But it's like, okay, what does that really look like? Because I think some women may be experiencing something they don't want, but they accept it as normal. Like, oh, this is just probably how marriage is, or it just ends up like this
Mm.
because not a lot of us have maybe like a positive also example of what a good marriage should look like. And not that I take this relationship like that, but my last one, I was with him for 4 years, my last boyfriend, and I had accepted what was going on as normal because I didn't know any better. So I thought, oh, well, when you're with someone
Mm.
for this long, then this is just what happens. This is, you don't really want to have sex with them anymore. It's not as like fun. And I accepted it as normal, truly. Like, oh, this is just what
Mm.
happens. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
And I think we were in that stage leading up to that, right? Like I felt alone a lot of the time. I was doing a lot of things with the kids on my own, and my husband was like doing his own thing. And I just thought, I'm really lonely, but maybe later down the line we'll fix this. Or like I had this like secret like fantasy that I would meet somebody else, and like, you know, like 10 years time, I would like run up into the distance with him. You know, like I had this just like, there was a big disconnect between us for a long time, but we were sort of parallel, living our lives parallelly. Well, that's not a word, parallel lives for a while before it started to really ramp up, like the fighting and
Okay.
there was clear discontent from both of our sides. Yeah.
And so this eventually led to your husband deciding that he wanted to separate from you, correct?
Yeah. So what happened after that moment where my sister died and my husband was like pretty much like cold and distant, and I just thought this is not gonna continue like this. I just thought we can't go on like this anymore. Like the darkest point, like, and there's nothing there. And so I remember like it was probably about a week later, my husband's like I tried calling him on his way home. He didn't call me back. And then he came through the door and I was just like I can't do this anymore. What's going on? Are you seeing someone else? Are you having an affair? Like what's going on? And he just looked at me and he's like, I just don't want to be with you anymore. I want a divorce. And I was like, what? Because even though it was so bad, that wasn't what I wanted, you know?
Wow. So it did come as a shock to you that he actually.
It shouldn't have come as a shock. Like I was clearly delusional, but it did come as a shock because he had been so doting for years. Like I never doubted the fact that he was like madly in love with me. But I never thought he would come out and be like, no, I don't want to be with you anymore.
Ooh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know that feeling. You're like, there's just no way that he's actually going to be like, I'm leaving. Like, you never
Mm-hmm.
truly accept that as a reality. And maybe that's a little
Yeah.
bit taking people for granted. And so so then did he actually move out after saying this to you?
Not right then. It was like, I think it was probably about 6 weeks later. Yeah. That it kind of like simmered down for a while. Like I had to go back to London with my sister. She knew I had to go through that whole thing. I think he didn't want to like just right away leave. But then it came up again and he was like, yeah, I do want to move out. So then he did. But he didn't leave the whole time. He was gone like 2 nights a week and then he would be home the rest of the time because he wanted to be around the kids.
How was that for you? Like,
It was
first of
very
all,
confusing.
after he said he wanted to separate, or he said, I don't want to be with you anymore, and then he didn't leave, did you relax and think, oh, he's not leaving? He's decided to not leave?
Mm-mm.
No.
No, because it was very clear that he was very unhappy. And
Okay.
so yeah, I remember this moment where I was like, because I was trying to get him to stay and like get him to talk to me. And then I was like, I did a lot of soul searching and I just thought like, I can't keep him here against his will. You know, I have to surrender. And like truly, if I love this guy, I need to let him go, you know, because he's not happy. And if I was really honest, I hadn't been happy for a long time either. I just didn't know what to do about it.
Which I think is the reality for a lot of men and women who are just
Mm-hmm.
in this less than desired situation, and nobody's given true actual tools to fix the problem. So you just end up accepting it as is and you do the best that you can. Or
Mm-hmm.
go to therapy, which we can talk about later why that doesn't work. I love your viewpoint on that, by the way. Okay, so he finally moves out and he's sometimes there twice a week. How long did this go on for?
That was about 9 months.
And
Yeah.
what are you like? I just want to know. I want to be in your head. Like, what are you thinking? How are you feeling? What are you going through during these 9 months?
Yeah. So I pretty much quickly decided like, I'm not going to go after him. I'm not going to hire a lawyer. I'm not going to file for a divorce. I'm not going to attack him. I'm not going because that wasn't the outcome I wanted. Like I got something came over me. I don't know if it was because I was also like going through really deep grief with my sister dying, but like I was really confronted with a lot at the same time, that I was able to have a clear picture of what I wanted to be, the outcome to be. And like, just real quick backstory, like with my sister and her death, like I'd had a lot of difficulties in that relationship as well. And I had worked with a grief coach and really, really, really cleaned my side of the street leading up to her death, and felt like so at peace with my relationship with her that it was like such a beautiful end. Like, obviously there wouldn't have been, it wasn't that I wanted it to end, but if she had to have died, I really got to such a place of peace and love in that relationship that I knew that no matter what, I wanted to come to that place if I ended up getting a divorce from my husband, because I knew the peace that that I got from going to my sister's funeral and like really feeling clear on my heart that I'd done everything in my power to repair that relationship. And I wanted to feel that with my husband too. And I was very, even though I was hurt and I was sad, I could see that there were things that I had done that contributed to the breakdown of my marriage, because my husband was so loving, so attentive, so kind, so caring for so many years. And I hadn't been particularly reciprocative of that. I'm not sure if that's the word either, but you know what I mean? I hadn't been reciprocating
Right.
that, because I was so busy. I had kids back to back. I was working full time. Like, I had so much going on that I just took him for granted for so long. And that I was sad that it had come to that place. And so I wasn't gonna take him to court, hire a lawyer, any of that, because I wanted to repair the relationship.
Which leads me to my next question is, how did you finally repair the relationship? Because I know that you and your husband are now together. So,
Yeah.
and this is part of what you help women with and you teach them is the power that we have to repair the relationship. So how did you approach that?
Yeah, and because I had such a fascination, that's a great question. Because I had such a fascination with relationships and personal development, it became like my hobby. Like, my friends joke that I have a PhD in relationships, and I really, really do. Like, I went deep. I read every single book that exists. I pretty much totaled how much it was going to cost me to get a divorce and invested that on hiring coaches, doing courses, like really, really, really diving into like what makes a relationship work, what makes it fall apart, how to repair it. And I just started implementing it like step by step. In the beginning, probably the first 4 or 5 months, I didn't have a personal coach. I just was doing programs and reading books and doing all that. So it took me longer. But I was just experimenting, like what works, what doesn't work, really getting to a place that I felt like confident in my own skin, because it takes a lot when you have babies, like, and you're on your own. And I wasn't feeling like myself. And so, I really repaired my self-esteem, my self-confidence. And I started to repair the relationship with him and like build positive momentum in the relationship, and start to I knew that it wasn't just going to be like one conversation. And like everyone asked me this, what one thing did you do? I'm like, I didn't do one thing. I did hundreds of thousands of little things every single day. And I changed the way that I showed up over time. And in the end, it was like our relationship was so good. It was like a no-brainer that my husband was going to move home.
So as he was like living separate from you guys, you started this work and started to
Hmm.
approach him differently and started to just approach life differently and gain more confidence. And through that work of just working on you and how you then, I'm assuming, like interacted with him,
Hmm.
started to build this better connection between you guys again.
Yeah, absolutely. And it got really fun. Like, for the longest time, we hadn't been having fun. It was miserable. And I was like, saying to my husband, why do you want to come home? Why are you staying away? It's like, the guy, of course, he didn't want to come home. Every time he came home, I was crying and whining, complaining that I was so tired. And And we started to have fun and we started to laugh again and joke again and like just rebuild that friendship. Yeah.
Wow. That is, I mean, it's like I get goosebumps just hearing that because I think it's so easy to go down the blame game, right? And I think a lot of women do that. And I think to a certain degree, we're like programmed and conditioned from maybe what we've seen growing up that like the woman is always complaining and it is always the man's fault and the man's not doing this and he's not doing this, da, 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 and we can go down such a rabbit hole of it's his fault this happened or it's what he's not doing or whatever. And the most amazing thing about you is you were like, no, it's me. It's what I've been doing. It's how I've been acting. And it's easy to, I think, as a mom, a new mom and having kids, to start going down that self sort of deprecating path of like, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so busy. He doesn't understand. I don't have energy, which just feeds and fuels and creates more of that crap you don't want to feel. And what you did is you chose to look at this is how I want to feel, how I, Sophie, want to feel. And through doing that work, we're able to like literally change the dynamic of your relation, the energy of your relationship, which is just amazing. You never once said, you didn't go to him going, you need to do this. I expect you to do that. You need to change this way and do that. I don't hear that from you.
Well, let me be clear. Before he told me that he wanted a divorce, that's what I was doing. And I would tell anyone that listened that my husband, needed to go see a therapist. He had childhood issues. I even went to a couples therapist because my husband wouldn't go. Okay, we're not into talking about therapy yet, but like, and all I did was complain about my husband, what a terrible person he was. And then the guy was like, well, why don't you leave him? Or it sounds like he wants to leave you anyway. And I was like, but that's true. What you focus on expands, right? And I was focusing on all the things that he was doing wrong. And that's what I was getting more and more and more of that.
Oh my gosh. And I love that you brought that up. The therapist says, well, you need to leave him. I think our society says, oh, well, then you're just not made for each other. You need to leave him.
Yeah. But
And
they're not hearing the whole picture,
oh,
because I would go to my therapist and tell them all the terrible things that my husband did through my eyes, through my perspective, through my viewpoint.
yeah.
And anyone listening to the stuff that I was saying would be like, oh my God, it sounds terrible. But what they weren't hearing was that I was also showing up in ways that weren't very conducive to the marriage too.
Yeah.
And it's like people have no choice but to show up as the way that you expect them to show up. If you think your husband is a narcissist, a this, that, and the other, like they will show you that over and over and over again.
Yeah. Well, you will show yourself that you're just
Well,
creating
yeah,
that.
you're exactly. And you're filtering everything through that lens.
Oh, wow. Wow. And you guys, I have to say here that anytime I come to Sophie with a complaint about my husband, because they have been there, she's quick to remind me of like, well, what story do I keep telling about my husband? I love that you don't feed into the making the man the monster and making him the bad guy and oh my gosh, that's terrible. Like you have a really great way of acknowledging what I'm going through, but also helping me take responsibility and helping me see that I have the power to either create more of what I'm complaining about or create what I actually want to experience, which has been a major breakthrough for me because I was always like, oh, he needs help. He is so stressed and it's causing me to feel this way. And it was always on him, truly, until working with you, where you helped me tell a different story to myself. What good can I see about him? What good story can I tell about him? It's been a game changer, really.
Oh, I love that. I
because
love that for you.
we need men. We need them. And I think that if you at one point felt like this person was your soulmate, then they're meant to always be your soulmate. And when there is discord or problems, I think that's just an opportunity for you to grow. And if you keep just going from partner to partner and blaming them, oh, he just wasn't the one. I was no longer sexually attracted to him. Next,
Yeah.
you're not doing the work for you. There's not going to be some magic guy that comes along now and is like all of a sudden, oh, he's the one. It may feel like it for, a year or two until that same cycle repeats, right?
Yes, I mean, for sure. And like I went to art school as well. Like that's kind of what I did was like painting and drawing. And it's kind of the same thing. Like in a drawing, you will get so far in a drawing. And if you don't go push through that, you're going to get stuck at that same point every single time in a drawing. And it's the same thing in a relationship. If you don't push through the limitations, you're going to get stuck at the same point every single time. And so this is another thing that really, really spurred me on in my journey was like, I had to be honest with myself. Like, is this a pattern that I have in relationships? And it was like I had gotten so much further in my relationship with my husband. Like we'd had kids, we got married, like all of these things. But it felt very familiar to me what I was experiencing. And it doesn't have to be in the relationship that, in a romantic relationship. It can be like, oh, I felt this way as a child, or I felt this way in a relationship, my friendship relationship, because everything is a reflection of what you've experienced on the inside, and you just keep seeing it reflected back to you on the outside until you heal those parts of you. um yeah, and it's frustrating because it's easier, very, very easy to blame other people.
Well, it's easy to the hard thing is this is you're seeing your reality in front of you. It's happening. And it's learning how to create a different reality despite what's currently happening right now. Like, you know what
And
I
you're
mean?
seeing what you're seeing today as your reality. This is a bit like out there, but what you're seeing as your reality today has been created by what you've done in the past. So
Yes.
everything that you've done in the past is leading you to this current manifestation of what you're experiencing. So if you want to see something different in your relationships, you need to start acting and thinking different things, feeling different feelings, and acting in different ways. And then you're going to start to see that manifest in your reality and your relationships going forward. Yeah.
And I love this is a perfect segue into like my next question for you because I feel like and this may just be like my reality, but a lot of women approach relationships in a very masculine way without even knowing it. And one of the things I needed the most from you or wanted from you to learn was how do I show up more feminine in my relationship? Because I'm just showing up as a dude. I don't know how to be different. Like this feels like it's just me. It's who I am. Love it or hate it. So can you give us like maybe 2 or 3 ways of how you can be more feminine in your relationship to allow your husband, I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you.
Thank you. Because if you show up masculine, this is what I've learned. You're emasculating your husband. He no longer feels like a man. You approach him with this masculine energy. He wants to fight you back. So, what are some ways that as women we can show up more feminine in our marriage to improve it?
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, if you're showing up in your masculine energy and you've got a masculine guy, they have like two options. They either become feminine, which is not what you really probably want, or they just get repelled by you. And this is why guys will just ghost you, leave, like, you know, because you're like energetically pushing them away. So to get into your feminine energy, firstly, you have to like tap back into like, who am I as a woman? Right. And I think like we, for the most part, live in a society, and it's amazing that we can have the same like careers as men and like, you know, have all the opportunities that men have, which is unbelievable. But if we're in like a go, 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 achieve, achieve, achieve mindset and energy, that's masculine energy. And so just learning how to like be in our bodies, like be in nature, be grounded, like really be aware of like our internal landscape through like really purposeful self-care, right? And not self-care like I'm gonna go run 10 miles and do more masculine things. It's just like I'm gonna connect with my higher self or like nature or my inner whatever it is, right? Like just really learning to be and be okay with being. That's feminine energy. And then also like allowing space for your man to like step up and lead. Like you would if like you were dating, right? Like allowing him to plan where you guys are going, allowing him to carry your heavy bags in, allowing him to book the restaurant, pay for the bill, whatever it is, right? And just like really getting into that receiving mode because that's the feminine is to receive and the man is to give. And when we're like running our relationships like we're running a business, there's no sexual chemistry, there's no polarity. And we as feminine beings get so drained. And then what we're looking for is feminine energy, like someone to like be our wife essentially. And it doesn't work on a sexual,
Mm-mm.
it doesn't actually work, right? What we need to learn how to replenish ourselves as feminine beings.
I
So
love
that we
the
can, but yeah,
receiving.
so that, yeah,
Learning to receive is like huge. Like even if you're as a woman, receive a compliment. How well do you
yeah.
receive a compliment, a gift, somebody who's like, hey, I'm going to buy you dinner? How well, let me turn this off.
I know, I love it flashing.
Like,
Okay.
stop flashing. Because
I love it.
your receiver portal is either on or it's off. And so, like,
Right.
are you willing to receive, his penis? Are you willing to receive a gift, a compliment, a hug from someone? And if that's turned off, it's going to get turned off everywhere. And literally, the essence of feminine energy is to receive. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, 100%. And it's what also makes you very magnetic and attractive to men. And you don't need to go out and do anything. You don't need to chase it. The more you chase it, the more you actually like push men away. And when you can be in the receiving mode, you actually receive everything that's coming to you in the universe, not just men, not just sex, not just compliments, like all the good things that are destined for you without you having to constantly force and push and drive because
Yeah.
that's not how the feminine operates.
Right.
Yeah,
You need
yeah.
it. I like that one of the things that you told me was like, listen, it's not that we don't need the masculine energy. Like it's important to have it, but how do we balance it? How do we,
Mm-hmm.
turn on the feminine when it needs to be turned on and like letting the husband lead? And one of the biggest things that you taught me was like, let him make the decisions, like stop making so many decisions, which was completely foreign to me. Like, I decided everything when our son would go to bed, what time is nap time, what he would eat, where we're traveling, when we're traveling, how we're spending the money, like everything. And it got to be so
Mm-hmm.
bad to where Noah would be like, he would have to come check in with me about a decision because he had lost so much trust in himself. So, and instead of expecting him again to like just decide, hey, you make all the decisions, it's like I had to decide also to sit down. And I love when you're like, stay
Mm-hmm.
on your side of the street, let him be a dad to Nova, like let your husband do things without you always coming in and criticizing and leading it in a different direction. I mean, this is how my mom was. This is what I knew. This is what I saw. And that's that's been an interesting journey, but that is a huge huge shift from masculine to feminine is like just sit down.
Sit back. Yes, I love that. Sit down, lean back. And if your husband doesn't have a say and isn't making decisions and isn't taking leadership and ownership over something, that they're not going to be invested in it. They're not gonna care. They're not going to participate. And so many of my clients are like, oh, my husband doesn't participate in my children's lives. He's not interested. And I'm like, how much time does he have with the kids? How much ownership does he have over that? Because if he doesn't, then he's going to default to you constantly, right? And I think that you're right. It's like learning to step back and learning to be a little bit uncomfortable during that transition phase. And if you've had, like you said, like your mom, did everything, and your model is one way, like being conscious to choose a different way can feel a little bit scary and uncomfortable, but the payoff is huge.
Yes. Well, they say nothing happens in your comfort zone. And
That's true.
I never would have thought about it from a relationship standpoint that I have to get uncomfortable and like because the fear is he going to make the wrong decision? Oh, he's
Mm-hmm.
going to decide something that I know I can probably decide better, right? I can do it faster, more efficiently, more calmly. I'll just do it. I think women a lot of us are fixers. Oh, he's
Mm-hmm.
getting stressed out doing it. Here, let me do it. Oh, you can't figure out where to go for a vacation or where to stay. Here, I'll do it. And it gets uncomfortable because you have to sit back and kind of watch the debauchery fucking go down. You have to watch him like fucking get angry, get pissed, and you're just like, I could fix this in 0.5 seconds and calm the entire thing down. But you know what? I'm not going to. I'm going to sit in this uncomfortable like energy. And you said to me, let it be a life lesson, not a wife lesson. And Sophie, I will never, ever forget that.
That's a good one.
It's like epic. And I hope that every woman out there hears that. And it's like, it is hard to let it be a life lesson because you're watching it just go down. But the more I do that, the more my husband actually trusts himself and the more powerful he feels and the more confident he feels. And now it's like the next level of connection, which is bringing back sex into the relationship. And so
Yeah.
how did that feel for you? I would love to know after going through all this with your husband, and then did it just naturally kind of improve through the laughter and the conversation and the connection with him?
Yeah. So, like, our sex life was really, really, really bad for lots of years. And that was down to me being like, oh, I'm so tired. Oh, I'm this, and I had like completely lost physical attraction
It,
for a long period of time. Right. And yes, I had kids. Yes, I could make every excuse under the book, right? Like under the sun. But I just was looking at my husband. I think like the same thing. I thought like, oh, I'm the boss here. I do everything. He does nothing. Like the story that I was telling myself about my husband was so negative that of course I wasn't actually going to be physically attracted to the guy that I had created in my head, right? Because he was not attractive. All the storylines that I was telling myself, I would have been crazy to be like, all right, yeah, let's get it on. Like after everything that I had said to myself. And so my husband for years, bless him, like felt completely undesired by me, right? Because I would be like, oh yeah, not tonight. Oh, like literally I would go to bed and hope like tonight's not the night, that like he touches me or whatever, right?
it's been there.
And then this is the case sometimes that when a marriage goes through this like big shake, I mean, sometimes the universe gives you something, it's like just a big shake, like wake the fuck up essentially, right? And I went through this experience with my husband. I was like, oh my god, no wonder, right? Like no wonder he's been feeling like this. Like he even said to me when he told me he wanted to leave, he was like, I know you love the kids, but I don't think you really love me. And I was like, but of course I love you. But like thinking back on it, did I show him love? Like, probably not. And I think for men, they do feel like they're a resource to women, and that they're not genuinely seen for who they are. It's like, are you bringing in the money? Are you going to work? Are you this? Are you that? Right? It's like, what can you do for me? And so, like, an underlying thing, for my husband and for a lot of guys, actually, is like, do you see me for who I am without what I can do for you, without what I can provide for you? And so, as I was going through all of this stuff with my husband and our marriage breakdown, we were so freaking honest with each other. We hadn't been that honest with each other for years, right? When he was like, this is how I really feel. And I was like, holy shit. I was being honest with myself for the first time in years. Like, oh my God, like I had been a total bitch for years and thought that it was okay to like behave like that because we had this marriage agreement. Therefore, you have to stay married to me. We're married, we've got kids. You can't leave me and I can behave like this, right? That all of this deep conversation, like confronting these parts of ourselves, it really started to ramp up the sexual chemistry between us. And my husband started standing up for himself. He's like, I'm not going to let you treat me like this. Like, I'm not doing this. And because he stepped up, actually, that's him stepping into his masculine. And he became much more attractive and sexy for me. I also then like started to feel like, oh my God, I might lose him. I was more in my feminine. I was very vulnerable because I was looking at my side of the street and really cleaning that up. And so our sexual chemistry came back like really quickly and powerfully. And it was fun, a lot of fun. And we started to really have fun, like sexually in our marriage. And we hadn't had that in so long, since we were dating, probably.
Wow. And how long in total have you guys been together?
13 years, I think. Yeah.
13 years. And you were together how long before the split?
8.
Wow. Wow. And I think like most people in your situation for sure just give up and move on in hopes of finding someone more compatible. And you said, no,
100%.
I'm going to salvage this and repair it with the person I actually do want to be with.
Yeah, and let me be clear, like things were not good. And my husband wasn't behaving very nicely. He wasn't being very kind to me with his words. I had not been very kind to him. But I knew the person that he was underneath everything else. I knew the guy that I married. The version of him that was currently presenting was not someone who I particularly wanted, right? But I knew he was still there. And
Wow.
so this is what I struggle with day in, day out when I like talk to women, especially like in the DMs, not women who are my clients, but like just conversations. And like, oh, I don't like him. He's this, he's that. I'm like, yeah, but who was the guy that you married? Because he's still there. And
Yes.
the relationship dynamics are what have gotten you guys into the place where he's now showing up this way and you're showing up that way.
Yeah.
It's not that he's changed. It's that your chemistry has changed. And when it's like a chemistry experiment, once you change one of the chemicals, the whole, experiment changes.
Wow. Wow.
So,
That is,
yeah.
I love how like wildly honest you are, like with yourself. Like
Yeah.
that's fucking beautiful. Like there are just not many people willing to be that honest with themselves and take that much responsibility, but look at what you created from doing that.
Yeah, and I think like the beautiful thing about taking responsibility, and I'm not saying that it was all my fault, right? Because
Sure.
it's always a relationship, it's 50-50. And I take responsibility for me because the only thing that I have power and influence over is myself, it's my thoughts, it's my feelings, it's my actions. And so if I take 100% responsibility, I know I can change. And by doing that in my marriage, I have taken so much responsibility for my life in other areas that I would never have had the courage to change if I hadn't have done it in my marriage.
Wow. And you transformed it. You
So,
transformed yourself and you transformed your marriage.
yeah, 100%.
So, last before we end things here, Sophie, I want to know why you don't think therapy works.
Um, you know, I just to preface this, there are some great therapists out there, and for some people, I'm sure it could be beneficial. However, it's been my personal experience and the experience of my clients that what it does is exactly what we were talking about at the beginning of this episode, right? It focuses on the problems and it goes in with this idea that we are going to tackle these problems, we're going to get to the bottom of these problems, and it just makes the problem bigger because what you focus on expands, right? Like we know that. And you're coming from it with the mind, right? And two people are sitting in therapy and they're trying to hash it out from their mind, from their fixed perspectives. And you're just digging the hole deeper and deeper. And actually, once you can step out and start to see things from different perspectives, and I think also, especially for women, to really start to connect with their hearts and learn to how to tap into like love, compassion, empathy from like a physical standpoint, not so much from like a mind,
Mm.
masculine standpoint, and to really be able to see the other person with like love and compassion. That's when you're going to start to be able to change things. But you're fighting with someone for an hour about the problem. It's just making the problem bigger. It doesn't solve anything.
No.
And also therapists are trained, again, for the most part, right? Therapists are trained to diagnose a problem and diagnose
Mm.
and to talk about it. But it's not so much solution focused.
Oh, I love that. That's what I was saying about doctors. It's like they're trained to diagnose a health problem, not necessarily
Yeah,
solution focused. They're just, here's the problem. And it's just so crazy. Like everything translates. And I want to
it does.
say, like when you said what you focus on expands, I think for the most part, people understand the concept of what you're saying. But there's these
Mm,
creepy little sneaky things that start to happen, which are called justifications. And you start to
mm,
justify, oh, I understand that, Sophie, but you don't understand my husband. He's this and he's that and he's
mm.
this and he's that. And I want to say loud and clear that it does not, well, obviously, like if you're being abused,
Yes,
that's
you're
a
being
different
abused.
story.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, but no matter what is going on, you have the power to change the story. And I was stuck in a rut of just blaming my husband for being feminine, for not providing, for not doing this, for being stressed, for being angry. And I was just every day, and I didn't feel good. I didn't feel good in my body. And I didn't know how to fix it until I started to see my husband in a different light, and I chose to look at the things I could appreciate about him, because I think we forget that they are someone. They are a person
Yeah.
with their own struggles and their own pain. And here I am beating
Yeah.
this man to a pulp with everything he's not doing, and he is a person. I would never do that to anyone else. I would have way more
Mm,
compassion and understanding and want to help.
yeah.
And once I started looking at my husband as like, wow, like this is a person who is definitely also going through it, who has feelings of his own and pain of his
Mm-hmm.
own. And started appreciating that despite all of that, he was still showing up. And despite
Yeah.
all of that, he was still choosing me. And it was like, I started to feel better actually in my body. And the experience I was having now in this relationship started to feel more positive. And it was not anything that he has done. It was everything that I had to do and dig deep within to change. And that is really because of your help, Sophie. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Of
I'm
course.
so happy for you. And that is exactly how it is. It's like, once you change how you feel on the inside, the external has no choice but to change.
No choice. And it's, you really, I think, trusting that. You have to like really surrender and trust that that is
You do.
true.
Yeah. And that I think honestly is one of the hardest things for people to trust that, hey, if I do this, will it work? Like that's what I hear a lot. But what if I do this work? What if he doesn't change? And I'm like, but you are going to change and you can't ever undo that, right? Like you're going to be a better version of yourself no matter what. And it always works
Yeah.
because that's just, it's universal law, right? What is within is without, right? So it's like what is going on in you is going to be reflected on the outside always.
Yeah. And I heard something the other day of like, you know, everything is happening for us to help us be
Mm-hmm.
able to experience life more peacefully, to experience life with more joy. And if you look at it that way, if you can sort of change how you view your husband, does it make it more peaceful for you? Does it make the experience of day to day more joyful? And for me, the answer is yes. If I can start to appreciate him, I definitely feel like life is more peaceful.
Mm,
And it doesn't
that's
really
amazing.
take that much to look around and find things you can appreciate about that person. If you can just like, they are a person. They're not like this horrible monster, you know? Um, Man, it's just, it's all in your power, which is actually very, very beautiful.
Amazing. Yeah, it's so true. I love what you say, like they are a person. And that get like I said, like I've just heard so much, from men and from my husband, like that sometimes we forget that, right? It's like, what can you do for me? What can you provide for me? How can you, you know, and instead of like we're all in this together and we're in a marriage together, two people going through their own experiences. And, for the women who I talk to who are going through like a massive breakdown in their relationship, it's like he's in it too. He's hurt, he's suffering too, just as much as you are. It's just everyone shows it in different ways.
Yes, so true. Sophie, I just think you are such an angel, and I love how you help people, and I love how you help women. Is there any last words that you would like to say to anyone who's listening about anything really that we've covered today or didn't cover?
Oh, Claude, it's such an honor to be here. Thank you so much. And I love everything that you do as well. And I do feel like we just say the same thing, just you say it about health and I say it about relationships. So it is amazing. And yeah, I think, my final words would just be like for women who are struggling, it's like the worst part of being in the struggle is feeling stuck. For me, that was the worst part, just not knowing what to do, not knowing how to solve the problem, not knowing how to make him change. And so finding some way to like take action in your relationship, and whether it's buying a book, whether it's finding a coach, whether it's going to like a relationship convention or whatever it is, just action in the direction of where you want to go is the first step to actually creating the outcome that you want. You have to take action.
I love that. And how can they take action with you, Sophie?
Yeah. So I'm on Sophie Orozco Coaching on Instagram and Sophie Orozco on Facebook. Um, that's how they can find me. And on my website, sophieorozco.com. And my name's kind of funky, so maybe you can
I'll put it in the description.
Yeah.
I will put it down in the
A
description.
lot of O's in there.
Yes. So you guys can have an easy time finding her, but I will tell you that she has dramatically not just changed my relationship, but who I am as a woman, and really helped me understand, okay, I get it. I need to be more feminine, but what does that mean? And she's given me some actionable tools to use. And I just feel more soft. I feel more pleasure as a person. And I thank you so much, Sophie. So if that sounds good to you out there, and if that resonates with you, please don't hesitate to message her. She's amazing. Thank you for being here, Sophie.
Thank you, Claude. Such a pleasure.
All right, guys, I will see you on the next episode. Bye, everybody.